Welcome everyone. Today we have our new episode and we will discuss about climate change, science and technology, and we have our world famous speaker, Madam Beth Love. We have Professor David Smith and Mr. Adam. I want to start from Madam Beth Love, especially how you discuss about climate change and this kind of things already is creating a very good impact in Asia Pacific academia. So, how you want to analyze today's topic, and especially uh, we have our uh, own different kind of aspects because of climate change. The developing nations has different challenges. If you advise them or guide them with your own expertise, I think it will be very helpful for our audience. Madam Betla.
Thank you so much, Sharif. I so appreciate you having me on this show and the great work that you're doing in the world to bring awareness in the Asian countries about the importance of addressing this most critical issue of all time. And, the topic today about science and technology or technological innovations regarding the climate, I think the most important thing for us to remember is that the Earth system has some really amazing technological innovations, and that we human beings have created the problem by our activities, going back 10 or 12,000 years when we started cutting down our rainforests and burning our natural vegetation to make room for farming, and particularly for our animals, because of course, raising animals for foods is inherently inefficient, and it uses a lot more land and other resources than does eating the plants directly. And so when we started doing those things, we started warming up the earth, and we started messing with the natural balance of the earth system. And in a way, my good friend, Dr. Silas Rao, says that we are the thermostat species, and we actually came, he's thinking in a spiritual or a soul level reason, that we actually came to prevent the next ice age, because Earth would have been in another ice age had it not been for the warming activities of humans. And it's not just Dr. Rao's opinion, but there's some science that backs that up. So we essentially stopped this huge system that was in this trajectory of, these ice ages, and then these warming periods, and then these ice ages. And we stopped it from going into an ice age, but then we overdid it. And we added to that agriculture, to that massive amount of burning and land clearing that put us on a warming trajectory. We added the technological innovations of the industrial age, and we see the curve of warming go up sharply. So with the burning of fossil fuels. And unfortunately, in the climate conversation and in policy decisions, and even with activists, so much of the conversation is on that sharp rise from the fossil fuels. And unfortunately, we won't be able to make it as a species on this earth if we don't also look at what is going on with our land, and what happens when we clear so much land and when we burn so much land to raise these massive amounts of animals for food. Now, the main mammals on the earth, the main life form by far, is our farm animals, and we're second. All of the wild mammals of the earth only take up 4%. That's only 4% of the biomass, of the mammal biomass, is the wild animals. And it used to be, of course, 90-some percent. And the animals and the humans and our animals were very small. So I think it's important that we go back to that change, and that we reverse it. Not that we reverse it all the way so that we go into an ice age, but that I don't think that we're in danger of that anytime soon. But that if we start to change our diets and reduce the demand for animal products, and put policies in place that make it more likely that people will eat more plants and less animal products. For instance, removing the subsidies from in many countries, including my own in the United States, animal agriculture is heavily subsidized, and so are the products of animal agriculture. But the foods that are healthy for us and sustainable for the earth, the fruits and the vegetables, have hardly any subsidies. So if we start changing the policies such that people are more likely to reach for those fruits, those vegetables, those whole grains to eat directly, those legumes, those nuts and seeds. Nut trees actually sequester carbon, that we can start reducing the amount of land that's being used. And there's tremendous opportunity costs that are happening right now that we can realize, in terms of carbon opportunity costs, because we're not sequestering the carbon that in the land and in the vegetation that we could be if we were reforesting and rewilding those lands. And I have some graphics to show about that. I don't know if this is the right time or if later in the show, if I could show some graphics.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you. Prof. Thank you.
yeah, let me know about the carbon opportunity costs.
Yes, yes. Professor David Smith. Uh,
Sharif, thank you so much. As she said, this is one of the profound topics that we need to address in the near future is how to tackle this problem. And using science and technology is a great way to begin to look at how to make faster changes than we can just using some natural means by themselves. The problem of the increasing population, the challenges brought about by globalization have made this problem even worse. As you begin to look at what are some of the major ways to tackle it, uh, there's four general strategies I believe that are in place there that technology can help us with. One is how do we reduce the demand for energy in all the major sectors of the economy, such as buildings, transportation, uh, manufacturing, and other industries like that. And by beginning to look at how to reduce the demand, you begin to reduce the demand for fossil fuels. And science and technology has definitely a place there. The second one really is how do you improve the efficiency of energy generation and utilization so that less fossil fuel is required to meet the end use of the energy demands. Therefore, you get lower CO2 emissions. Again, I think improving the efficiency is really a science and technology area can play strong. Another is how do we replace the high carbon fossil fuels such as coal and oil with lower carbon or zero carbon alternatives such as nuclear, biomass, wind, solar, wave action, and others. Again, I believe there's definitely a technology play there. And the fourth one really is how do I capture and mitigate and reuse the CO2 emitted by the combustible fuels and begin to convert that to other uses. And again, I think there's science and technology has a key place and a key role in utilizing those. Now, it still is going to take human intervention. People have to change. Changing people is the slowest part of the equation as we get there. But we can bring in science and technology to help, particularly across those four key areas where climate change has been accelerated by a lot of those. Um, and it's going to take the group of a global effort to do it because even if I do that in my region, it's not going to affect the global problem. This is a global problem and it requires global action.
mhm. Thank you. Mr. Adam.
Truthful. I'm already unmuted. Nice to see everyone here today. One thing I noticed culturally is that it has become more of a hot topic now, and the issue has been cemented in our daily lives and in our professional and personal lives. You're seeing a lot of celebrities like actors and naturists and public figures coming together to brainstorm public relations that will campaigns that will inspire people to come together to tackle it. Um, like I saw the other day, I think it was Kate Winslet, the actress, has recently come out with a new documentary, something to extinction, racing to extinction. Or something. I've forgotten the name exactly. I think it's called. Particularly with the connection between climate and our dietary habits, um, with veganism being part of the solution, or more and more people turning to veganism, as veganism is now by now quite popular, or certainly more popular than it has been before. And it's been said that the meat industry, particularly breeding, feeding, and keeping livestock, is one of the biggest culprits. And with the popularization of lab-grown meat and healthy vegan alternatives, there is still a bit of a yuck factor to get past from meat eaters and food connoisseurs, but that's to be expected from some, you know, some foodies, you know, as well as being part of the solution to climate emergencies regarding our diet. This potential cultural shift away from meat eating and meat being such a staple in our diets would also drastically minimize the total amount of suffering across the whole world as well, for obvious reasons. I have friends and acquaintances in effective altruism and ethics and philosophy who have been supporting the eventual closure and dismantling of factory farms and slaughterhouses, and even meat eaters I know have pushed for the abolition of factory farms in favor of more ethical alternatives, if you can say they're ethical alternatives. So shutting down surplus and eventually unnecessary parts of the infrastructure would also go towards helping towards climate change solutions. Thank you, Sharif.
Thank you, thank you, ma'am. I think you want to share some uh, data and information with our audience. Thank you, Professor Paul, joining today's session. Yes, Madam Betlab. Can you unmute, please?
Thank you so much. Yeah, for starters, I definitely want to say that even though I started with food, I agree that we definitely need to transition to a clean economy where fuels and energy are concerned. We need to transition off of fossil fuels. The problem with that is that it won't change the temperature fast enough because the CO2 lasts in the atmosphere for up to 10,000 years. Some of it's still left, hundreds of thousands for the majority of it. So we need to really focus on these short-lived climate forcers. And methane is about, I read some recent science, it's about equally emitted now by the fossil fuel industry and ruminant animals. So, so we need to really concentrate on those short-lived climate forcers like methane, nitrous oxide, black carbon. Black carbon is mostly released when rainforests are burned to clear land to raise livestock. And then also now from the fires that are being caused by climate change. So there's these feedback loops we're dealing with. So we definitely need to transition off fuels, and I did not mean to imply that we don't, but it's not enough. That's my main message: is that is important and critical, but not enough in and of itself if we don't also change diets, as Adam was saying. And just to respond to that idea of, yes, some people are, many people, most people I know, if they're aware of the horrors of factory farming, they don't want to support it. But currently in the United States, 99% of our animals come from such types of farms, if you can call them farms. And around the world, it's about 95%. So we don't have the land. The land that's already being taken up by animal agriculture is already the largest part of the largest use of land mass on Earth. So we don't have the land to do this more somewhat considered humane, as more ethical, as Mr. Adams said. We don't have the land to transition, so we must change our diets. And I want to show you the slides. And I think, Sharif, if the easiest way for me to do this might be to use my we can try. Let's try this regular way. Sometimes when I try the sharing on StreamYard, it doesn't work, but let's try. Let's see.
This share option.
Okay.
This,
yeah.
yeah.
Let me see if I can find the correct screen. It doesn't show. There we go. Okay. There's one of them. Okay. So is that sharing? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So that, this is just showing the carbon opportunity costs, or the total carbon costs of different foods. And the blue is showing the production-based emissions. So that's the emissions that actually come from the production of the food. And then the green is the carbon opportunity costs of the land that could be used if the land was reforested or rewilded that food is growing on. Then we would realize those greater carbon savings. So the top is beef grown in Brazil, and under that is beef grown in Ireland. That has to do with different cultivation practices. And at the bottom, you can see we have the vegetable sources of protein, and they're just looking at high protein foods here. So the animals, the beef, another kind of beef, another kind of beef, lamb, pork, chicken, and milk are on top. Milk is slightly less, but you have to really look at the water issue on milk and some other things. But for the most part, it's the vegetable foods, the plant-based foods that are that are really much more closer to carbon neutral in terms of their total greenhouse gases. Now, did my slide just change or not? Do I can't see whether my slide changed or not. Let me see. It didn't. Okay. So I have one more slide to share, and I think I need to stop sharing and share again because I just
Yes.
changed. Okay. So let me see. Stop the screen. Okay, I'm going to share the other one. And this one is, that one was just specific foods. And this one is if we did a dietary change. And you could see starting at the top is our global average diet today. Well, I'm sorry, starting at the very top that doesn't have a bar. So the global average diet today is the baseline, right? So our food production now emits 13.7 billion tons of greenhouse gas each year, and it's equal to about a quarter of the total emissions. And that doesn't include the potential carbon sequestration. So if we look at each of these bars, they represent some shift in diet toward more plants. So the top of the bars just includes taking the ruminant animals, the animals that emit a lot of methane gas, which is a very potent greenhouse gas, 86 times more potent than carbon dioxide. If you just take the beef and the lamb, except leave some ruminants, leave the dairy cattle in the diet, then you save a total of 7 gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalent per year. And more than half of that is in the carbon opportunity cost, the amount of carbon you could sequester in that land if it was restored to a more natural state. And then moving down, you see the next one is no beef, lamb, or dairy. The next one is no beef, no meat or dairy, but eggs and fish are included. And you see quite a bit of savings there, 13.6 total gigatons per year between the actual emissions from the product and then the carbon opportunity costs. And the vegan diet, of course, saves the most. If everybody in the world went vegan, we would save almost 15 gigatons per year between the reductions in emissions and the opportunity, the amount that we can sequester in the land and the vegetation. So I think this is a really important point for us to consider. Is not just, when you look at the figures of how much is emitted, sometimes people, as Donald said, sometimes people look regionally or just at their municipality. I saw a conversation the other day, and the conversation was, well, how much of our how much does our food supply contribute to the CO2 emissions or to the emissions? And somebody answered 10%, and they gave a figure from the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency of the United States. And that 10% figure, it's like it bears no resemblance to any global figure. And even the lowest global figure is 14.5%. And there's serious flaws in that figure. For instance, it doesn't include the breathing of the animals. It doesn't include the burning of the rainforests. But the lowest figure worldwide is 14.5. So this conversation, they're acting like it's 10%, as though in the United States, it's only the carbon that we're emitting that we're going to have to deal with. So we really need to look at this globally. And globally, there's a lot of potential if we shift our diets even toward more plants. And I'll end there for now.
Thank you. Professor David Smith, I know you have your appointment and you can. Yes.
Thank you very much. I agree with where we're headed. And as you begin to look, though, what we need to do is really understand the ecosystem that we need to have in place to accelerate the speed and the scale of the change, because it really is a scale issue and how we begin to solve those problems. So, if you go back and look at the government and the public institutions, they have to invest in basic research and create the right environment to foster innovation. Then you go into the universities and research centers, and they have to do the research to do it. Companies, they need to be able to adapt it, use it, produce it. You have the local consumers and things, which are the ones which have to adapt to these new changes. You have investors. Investors have to go ahead and put the capital in place to support entrepreneurs, to support the companies as they go back and retrofit and replace many of the methods as you begin to change and handle that. You also have the entrepreneur environment, and they have the ability and the agility to go and be able to do those. Plus, you have to even then go back to universities and begin
Mhm,
to say, how can I retrain the
mhm,
people who are now being displaced by some of these changes? So you've
mhm,
got to put that stakeholder collaboration in place. You have to enhance the funding. You have to create an enabling ecosystem that can go and handle this area. One last comment here, really, and it's one of the places where we can really leverage the technology to go back then. We need to begin to look at the where to put standards in place around building efficiency. How do we do the different generations? How do we look at electric cars, e-mobility solutions? And how do we begin to charge those? And how do we begin to transition more to probably hydrogen-based power? How do we optimize our grids? Biofuels, biomass are things that really can help us as we begin to get here. Um, in industry, how do we cover heat? As she has said, how do we do our agriculture resource management? How do we look at managing the pieces there? And biomass production can be part of that. Do we really want to go and look at ways to reformulate many of the tools that we've come to depend on, such as how can we make low carbon steel and low carbon aluminum, which how will help us with this? A key underlying ally factor that is really necessary for us to do this is how do we do very large scale energy storage? Because if I begin to generate more by renewable energy, uh, solar power, wind, I need a place to capture that. And there's many others there, but these are some of the major ones that we're going to have to do to be able to uh, handle the ends as we're coming up on them and how to put the pieces into place. Again, what was interesting with the list I've gone through is they all require collaboration, and they all require things not just at the top level of the issue we're trying to address, but at the levels below it. What are the enabling technologies? What are the enabling policies and regulations that are in place? What are the enabling education requirements we're going to have to be able to compete in a way to make this a top priority for our citizens and our companies and our governments going forward, and how to knock down those bridges so that it can be done in a way that everyone survives at the other end. But Sharif, very important topic, and I love the discussions we've had so far.
thank you, Professor. Thank you for your support for World Talent Economy Forum. Uh, Professor Paul.
Yes, thank you, Sharif, and thank you to all the panelists. So, in order to accomplish, the things that, a number of things that David is talking about, we need to change we need countries and world governments to change the incentives and with the money flow. And at the moment, vast pools of money continue to go into the fossil fuel industry, whether it be direct dollars or favorable, favorable situation for new mining of new oil wells or coal or gas, natural gas, which is basically methane. There's lots of subsidies that are going to these, and many of these subsidies are hidden. So we need governments to actually um, remove subsidies as was promised by many countries almost a decade ago, and there's been no action. And since the COVID pandemic, more and more money in the recovery, going towards recovery from the pandemic, has gone into more subsidies for fossil fuel companies. And we're seeing lots of global turmoil now with supply chains and with failing crops, and shortages of materials, and prices are going up for food and many other things. And there's certain, when you put globally all the eggs in one basket and mass produce something, with very inexpensive labor, in one country, and close down plants that are doing the same thing in other countries, you really expose yourself to, to global shocks. And also the idea of producing goods and services just on time, where in a car plant, for example, all the different components come one day and they're all put into a car the next day. Well, when there's supply issues with any one component, the whole thing collapses like a house of cards. You just don't have the materials to produce. So these sort of things, these shocks are hitting us now, and we really need to redirect money to things that will address, the climate issue, the climate problem, whether it be adaptation or mitigation, and so on. Because we're just not doing that right now. We're putting money into things that are making the problem worse. And the biggest factor is the subsidy of fossil fuels. So I'm hoping that this topic, is covered substantially at the COP26 in Scotland, which starts in less than 3 weeks. Or and I'll be attending the conference and giving press conferences, and I'm going to talk quite a bit about fossil fuel subsidies. And as Beth pointed out, it's not enough to just slash fossil fuel emissions because of the sunk costs, the carbon that's already in the air and ocean system. And we need to really look at ways of, we need to change, human behavior, our diets to less, to more plant-based, less animal-based, as she said, to realize huge savings in emissions reductions. But I would go a step further and say that we need to look at, we need to really try to scale up some ideas and methods to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere ocean system. And also to, one very interesting thing, which has come out in a recent scientific study, was the idea that the albedo of the Earth, or the total reflectivity of the Earth, has decreased about 0.5%. So nominally, it's about 30% of the incoming solar radiation from the sun gets reflected back into space, right? So, but that number, the Earth is actually getting darker overall. So now, instead of 30%, if that was the number, it's 29.5%. That represents a radiative forcing of about 0.5 watts per square meter, which is a very, very large component of the energy imbalance on the Earth. And the reason why the Earth is darkening is because of a reduction of clouds over the oceans. So, this is very bad news in itself, but it's also very good news because there are some methods to enhance low-level clouds and make them more reflective. And clearly, if we did this, at a few percent level, we could significantly cut back on the heating on the planet and buy us time to do these other things. The problem is that we're always we're always we're up against a very, very difficult time frame because events in the climate system are spiraling out of control and very, very quickly. Just look around the world, look at the extreme weather events that are wreaking havoc on humanity and our infrastructure. And we have no time, no luxury of time. We're up against the wall, and we have to do things extremely quickly now.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Paul, for your excellent analysis. Mr. Marshall.
Yes, sorry I'm late, but I've been having technology problems because of Hurricane Ida, a climate event. Yeah, that was much more significant than regularly predicted, which is an example of what we're just following on with what Paul was talking about. I'm here as part of this panel to discuss what we are actually doing that in a practical sense to address these issues. So we are using the climate bond under the waste management taxonomy, which calls for turning brownfields into greenfields. And the definition is an EU definition, not a US definition, which is typically people like GE had a brownfield up the Hudson River. They created PCBs in the Hudson River, which pollutes the Hudson River. They had heavy metals and toxins depleted on the site, and then they abandoned it. That's typically what people think of brownfields in the United States, although there are other definitions. But in the EU, the definition there is to take waste handlers, waste haulers, people who just have lots of waste and can't find a way to get rid of it, and usually dump it into a landfill. So we formed 7 joint ventures, 2 in California at 4 locations, 1 in Idaho, 1 in New Brunswick, Canada, which is and 1 in Jalisco, Mexico, and 1 in Maui, and 1 in Colombia. We just had our meeting with our Colombian partners yesterday. So the Colombian partners are interesting because they're a sawmill lumber company, and they have huge amounts of sawdust and waste from different parts of their value chain or their supply chain. So when foresters go out and fell the trees that they use for the lumber, they have waste. When they turn the wood into lumber, then they have more waste. So they have so much waste. Most of that sawdust in other places is usually sold to chicken farmers to use for egg layers, not fryers, not the chickens that you eat, but the ones that create the eggs. And that they have so much that they bury it and burn it. So therefore, it's a clear fit as quote unquote a brownfield entity. We form a joint venture with them, and we turn all that brownfield material into products. But what kind of products? They're not shoes or dresses or cups or cell phones or EVs. In fact, all the products that we're creating help reduce further environmental impacts, because out of that material, you can create a material that people call biochar. And biochar it has its issues, but we've solved a lot of those issues. One of them is being scalable. So we convert 120 metric tons of waste, and we converted it into what we call elemental char. We don't even use the term biochar anymore because it's problematic in and of itself. And then depending on the characterization of that char, if it has a high carbon content or a low carbon content, we formulate it and create formulated chars. The elemental chars can also be used as filtration media because chars, unlike charcoal, which everybody keeps calling it, charcoal is dense and is for energy, and it puts your shrimp on the Barbie. But actually, what char does, it has high porosity, and the greater the porosity, the better. Most people know it as coal that's been converted into activated carbon, but coal is not a good product because it has other toxins in it. The other thing that we are doing with our joint ventures, aside from Colombia or in Jalisco, Mexico, and Maui, Hawaii, we have MSW. So we're converting MSW into chars, and those chars are different than the woody biomass or than the peat that is mined in Alberta, in New Brunswick, Canada, which when you mine peat, you create toxins in the soil. So we take that out and convert that into high carbon content. But the low carbon content can be used for macadam or cement, and we have a process to create a concrete from a cement that we can create that is 10%, 30% lighter than reinforced concrete and 100% stronger. That has huge capabilities in earthquake-prone zones where bridges might tumble or fall, like what happened in California, Northern California, when the whole highway systems collapsed. But that was partially due to poor construction. But still, it's really remarkable stuff. But in addition to that, you can also do soil amendments. You can create longevity of cattle and livestock. What's foie gras from, right? Geese. So in the cost action studies that we performed from 2009 to 2016, we did double-blind studies on livestock and found that it reduces the mortality rate if it's formulated properly, like a drug, and fed to cows in the proper amounts. It reduces the mortality rates by a minimum, not a maximum, a minimum of 50%. That's huge, because if you know anything about livestock, there's a mortality rate that's greater than what is published, and there's a huge replacement market for those, and you're creating more emissions. So we also deal with GHG emissions. We can air mine all sorts of greenhouse gas emissions, not just CO2, but methane and other fluorocarbons and things like that, and turn that into energy or electricity. And that is at a 0 to 18 parts per million NOx, which is asymptotic, meaning it's almost zero. Right now, everybody on this call is breathing a minimum of 400 parts per million, probably even 900 parts per million, depending on where you are on the earth. So the point is that there are practical solutions and we're implementing them, but it's not going to take just us. We need to get everybody on deck. And as Paul pointed out, time is of the essence. And one of the things that people don't talk about is, what is the canary in the coal mine? Well, the canary in the coal mine, and you can look it up. There's videos by Sir David King and others, and I've posted them on my LinkedIn account through our company about the canary in the coal mine. It's the Thwaites Glacier. The South Pole is on the ice is on land. The North Pole, the ice is in the water. So when it melts, it doesn't dissipate the water, but on the South Pole it does. So all I'm saying here is that there's lots of practical opportunities to address this. And we are doing things. There is hope. And yesterday, I just joined a forum with Catherine Hayhoe. If you know who she is, she's a very famous climate scientist. And she just wrote a book that I think a lot of people should read about. I have no stake in her book, but I think it's a very well-written book. And it's a book about positive attitude, about how everybody can participate in this climate change endeavor. And I call it an endeavor and not just a climate crisis, because it's something that has to be dealt with, just like the pandemic, just like other issues. And we're always going to run into people who are naysayers. It's always been the case from time immemorial. It's just that we think it's new here now. But we need to take the Catherine Hayhoe approach and get that positive message out there, collaborate. And I totally agree that we need to collaborate as much as possible. So if anybody wants to collaborate with me, DM me and we'll find a way to make it fit. But I just want to encourage everybody and thank all the panelists that are on here that this is part of the process, what we're all doing. So thanks very much for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Actually, World Talent Economy Forum, we are taking initiative for national development. Malaysia, we are working on public-private partnership. Perhaps this is one of the largest initiative of Asia-Pacific governments, like from Malaysian government. And beside that, in South Asia, in different places, with millions of people, actually, we are trying to change their life with startup village and sustainable livable cities and this kind of things. And yes, technology transfer, modern science and engineering transfer is very important for developing nations. So in any point, if you want to join in our initiative, any of our speakers and their organization, we are happy to do that, because we have peoples. And how we can minimize the gap in between developed and developing nations, the more we can collaborate, the more we can share our knowledge and our technology. That is the way of solving the problem. That's why we are arranging this kind of dialogue. This kind of a dialogue is very, very helpful. Like I just want to share, I'm very happy when I saw, even from Bangladesh, 107 university, they are collaborating with World Talent Economy Forums, and it's a millions of youth. And many government high official, largest corporation, they start to believe that climate World Talent Economy Forum can contribute. So any of your contribution will be very helpful for us. And I'm so one point from my personal experience, I always see that the largest corporation, they do not want to touch the grassroots level, but this is our commitment that we will touch the grassroots level people, and it's a millions of people, and you can be the part of the history. And this is our commitment. So we have our all of the dialogue we are actually sharing with all of the institutions. So Mr. Adam, you are also our fellow, and you are also contributing for World Talent Economy Forum. So what's your views and
I
regarding this topic?
Thank you, Sharif. Thank you. Um, I was thinking a bit more about what we were talking about earlier with regards to meat, the meat industry, and how shutting down slaughterhouses and factory farms in favour of more ethical solutions would be almost pointless, because most of the meat is processed in such ways that we would need to go through a proper full-on paradigm shift culturally and socially away from meat as a staple, even if it was supposedly ethical, to a plant-based, carbon-friendly alternative. I was thinking it's inevitable that when something is outlawed, grey or even black market will pop up in a few places in the underground, in the underbellies around the world. And it could be said that it is harder to get away with criminal activity unpunished these days with all the surveillance networks we have now and all the other aspects of our modern infrastructure, tracking, life logging, social media. Thus, it may have been easier going back through the 20th century, 19th, 18th centuries, and so on, where if you're a criminal, then a dark corner and some loyal accomplices maybe would have sufficed. Although we could counter that with if you had enough cunning and intelligence with enough tech expertise, it is easier in some ways to run a criminal enterprise when you have encryption, VPN, cybersecurity, and so on at one's disposal. So, of course, surveillance and tracking networks raise all sorts of ethical questions. But if we witness the growth of a black market serving authentic meat in underground restaurants, even after we have shifted away from that paradigm that's been outlawed, then surely as stewards over this planet with the power, thus the responsibility to take care of this spaceship Earth and its fellow travelers, because obviously we are not the only intelligent, sapient, sentient species living here. Then, if we are talking about surveillance versus free will and so on, what about those enduring great suffering and painful deaths? So, future technology giving people a God's eye view will be crucial as part of our steward's toolkit, where we must fulfill our responsibilities to prevent great suffering. And as we know, these ethical responsibilities are intertwined, where, for example, dietary shifts help solve or help go towards solving issues. And we've got issues about suffering and climate emergencies as well. Thanks, Sharif.
Thank you. Thank you. This is actually excellent discussion. Actually, we are working on this climate change, but definitely we need more support, more collaboration, and very good relationship, like people like you. And definitely we want to train people. And if you want to offer short courses, because World Talent Economy Forum, we want to offer short courses for micro courses for the young communities. If you are interested, even we have record that we train government officials, we train universities and the corporations. So we are open for that. If you have any kind of courses you want to offer through World Talent Economy Forum, and we can as a team we can generate new things, because there is a millions of people, they need actually proper guideline. I one thing I can ensure you, even though we are doing many conference or many things. But if you think about awareness, real knowledge, I want to say 90% people from the developing nations, they do not know nothing. That is the reality. And this is global issues. Without this 90% people, I do not know how you want to solve this problem. But the developing nation knows. Ayan, what your observations about climate change, those who are joining in World Talent Economy Forum in the remote area from the grassroots level, they do not know nothing. So this is also good opportunity for the scholar like you, who can help us, who can guide us, and we can promote your knowledge to our people. So thank you everyone. This is really great discussion. I directly want to go for the concluding remarks, and in the concluding remarks, all of our speaker, if you at some point how we can be more like strategically, how we can work together, and how we can go for more collaborations and more partnership. Professor Betlav. Yes.
Thank you so much, Sharif. Yes, that's a great topic, partnership, and Eat for the Earth and I are totally there with you. We would love to create short courses and work with you with the government officials. So partnership and collaboration has been mentioned here. These are key. I want to build on what Marshall said about this idea of it being an endeavor. Well, on the last time I was on this program, I talked about it being an opportunity. And the Lancet Commission called climate change the greatest global health opportunity of the 21st century. And I believe that this climate crisis could be, if we capitalize on it, the greatest health, not only global health, but also global mental health and global collaborative and partnership opportunity of all human history. That if we really are able to solve this problem, what it's going to take is going to elevate as a species. We will be a different creature if we are able to be successful. And yes, we don't have time. So this is going to require a rapid transformation of human systems, but also human consciousness. Because for so much of human history, we have been structured around some inherently flawed ideas, like survival of the fittest. And like, I'm going to get mine, it's all about me getting what I need for me and my family, and climbing to the top of the heap. All of these things that are so faulty that have brought us to this place. We wouldn't be in this place if we were structured around human values that we all really truly hold. We all hold values of compassion. Mr. Adam talks about the effective altruism movement, which is really looking at, how can we be altruistic in a way that's effective, not just spread our dollars and our good deeds, willy-nilly, but really be critically thinking about how we can be altruistic. Because at our hearts, humans want to serve, we want to help, we want to be part of communities. We don't want to hurt other living beings for our pleasure. And yet we've been so corrupted by this system of capitalism and by the way the Western world has been leading with this model that makes corporations people, if you can believe that. And when corporations, what they're wholly organized around is getting the biggest financial bottom line for their stakeholders, this is warped. This is corrupt. This is a crime. This is not how we are inherently. We are good people. I don't know anyone who would want to hurt other living beings for their pleasure. I don't know anyone who would want to destroy our Earth home and take down all of the other intelligent beings and non-intelligent beings and trees, etc., with us. And so this climate crisis is presenting this opportunity. It could be, some analysis says that we only have 6 years to not, it's not like in 6 years we're all going to be wiped out, but that we only have 6 years during which to rein in the emissions sufficiently so that we don't go into runaway global warming, a point at which afterwards the innovations that we make, regardless of how big the bioengineering is or how intelligent we are, that after that point there'll be so many feedback loops that we may never be able to restore something that's habitable for us. And so I just say, let's seize this opportunity. Let's collaborate. Let's form partnerships. Let's let our higher angels rule and become the people that we can possibly be, the people that we are ordained to be, the kind, compassionate, loving, just people that will turn this around. And that's what we need to do. We need to transform ourselves so that we can transform this world. And thank you so much for this opportunity to share with these people, because each of us has part of the solution, and we're all needed for this whole picture to evolve in a correct way. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Betlove. Professor Paul.
Yes, this basically we have a very a choice here. I mean, if we don't restructure human systems, then they will be restructured by the planet, by abrupt climate change. And we're already seeing some of this restructuring occurring with changes in the, huge global changes in the atmosphere and ocean circulation patterns, weather patterns, and that will really impair our ability to grow food and cause, global famines and in the relative short term, within the decade. So we really don't have any time left. We have to, try to, work at the utmost speed to transform this planet in order for our very survival. Not just to maintain or improve life, way of life, reduce poverty, do all the good things that as most people have an inherent understanding of what is good, what we need to do. But where if you were if you were on a different planet, as an observer of the Earth systems and the people on the Earth and what was happening, and you would know that in the lifetime, within a lifetime of the sentient species, an individual in the sentient species, which is humans, that this planet has lost 70% of its biodiversity. And if you were an outside observer looking in and saw this intelligent species losing 70% of their biodiversity in a short period of time and completely heading in the wrong direction, heading towards catastrophic destruction, you would try to get a message out to them and tell them what was happening so that they would change their behaviors and change their ways and recognize the threats. And it seems that we tend to leave things as a species sort of to the last minute. We wait until things get so bad and our backs are against the wall, and then we make changes. But we're really we've really completely messed up the climate system. And the problem is if we continue to do so, then the emissions of carbon that we produce from burning fossil fuels, um, is pushing us to a state where the Earth itself, the responses of the Earth itself, produce more carbon than we do. So, in other words, this problem could be taken out of human hands. We could lose our agency to make changes that were sufficient to bring the Earth back to relative stability if we leave it any longer. So this is why many more and more scientists are saying we're in a climate emergency. It's it's not climate change; it's a climate crisis. It's a global crisis, and there are massive consequences that we're experiencing now that are well beyond the realm of normality. For example, the latest example would be over 30 inches of rainfall in parts of Italy in less than a day. We're talking about several feet of rain in less than a day, and 5 or 6 years of rainfall in Oman from a cyclone that came across the Gulf of Oman, and because the water temperatures are so high, we're seeing increases in the frequency, severity, and duration of these extreme weather events, but they're also happening in regions where they never happened before. So we really we either we're getting tremendous transformation and restructuring of human society and what we do, whether we like it or not. It's just far easier on world populations and ecosystems if we do it willingly ourselves, at a pace that we can handle, rather than have the earth come and throw it all at us at a pace that we cannot handle. So we don't really, the transformation is going to happen whether we do anything or not. It'll just be horrific if it happens because we don't do anything.
Thank you. Marshall.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I want to thank everybody for having me on the panel with such esteemed people. It's great to be here. Been on it several times, and I think it's a great forum. And I think all these people are contributing tremendously to what we need to do. I think everybody needs to listen to these folks. I think that Reverend Love pointed out something that I thought was very important. She touched on it briefly, but I have to go, so I just want to leave it here on this point, and that is, I think in part of, besides the climate change and besides what Paul and everyone else is talking about in terms of the physical threats and the climate threats, in order for humans to change, this is part of my bailiwick. I have a degree in clinical psychology, so I could tell you that the biggest problem that we're having, not with us, but with the people that are naysaying or going against the grain, and it only represents a small minority. But then again, there's also, when you think about the fossil fuel industry, is controlled by a minority of people on the planet. They control the richest people in the world. There's 300 richest people in the world control more than 3 billion in assets. So there's a disparity, as was pointed out. But I think the biggest threat to humankind is trauma, human trauma. It comes from childhood. It comes and it perpetuates through our lives. It allows people to make decisions. It makes crazy decisions. People do crazy things with trauma. Some people heal from it. Some people don't. Most don't. We've all heard of PTSD from war experiences, but also from auto accidents. So I just want to point out that if we're going to address climate change, we also need to address the mental issues, the mental health challenges that people are embracing right now in order to either get on one side or the other of this climate change and climate opportunity that as I see it. It's an opportunity to as was said on this panel, to take mankind, womankind, and push it into a healthier direction and get better results for not just the planet, but for people and our children and our grandchildren. I just, in March of 2021, I had 2 grandchildren in February, and now I have 4 grandchildren in March of 2021. 2 of my daughters gave birth. So we have our first princess, granddaughter, and we have 3 grandsons. But they're all young kids, and they need an opportunity to have an opportunity, but not only from a climate perspective, but also from a trauma perspective, to not embrace trauma, but to live healthy lives. On that note, I have to leave because I got to get onto a call with a potential guarantor for my climate bond. So there you have it. Thank you for having me. Cheers. Talk to you later.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Mr. Adam.
Regarding partnerships and collaborations, well, I think this global culture has helped to soften the walls between groups of people that used to be so culturally different, with some shared interests, obviously, but still so different that exchanges risk getting frequently lost in translation. And in just a few generations, I think we have witnessed the beginnings of a kind of internationalist culture where people from all the continents have formed solid working relationships and personal friendships and can sit at the same table and build a rapport. Um, I like to think that we've witnessed the beginnings of a golden age of diplomacy or a golden age of international relations just a few generations ago or a single century ago. You would need diplomats and dignitaries and emissaries to help facilitate meetings between empires and kings, and the slightest discourtesy would trigger a crisis or all-out war. And obviously, I'm well aware of the conflict still raging close to home and afar. But I'm talking about more about digital citizenship, digital worlds, where two people, each one from a country that are at war with each other, can still add each other on Facebook and share interests. And even in the offline world, we do have the United Nations gatherings in Switzerland. So there are domains beyond governance and the military where people from all four corners of the world can come together over their shared interests and concerns. Digital communications and areas of human endeavor facilitated by digital and wireless technology have been very important in such developments and will continue to be so, I think. Thanks, Ray.
Thank you. Thank you. This is an excellent discussion, and I'm sure our audience definitely like it because we are trying to bring many important points. Thank you, Madam Betlav, Mr. Adam, and Professor Paul for your continuous support for World Talent Economy Forum. And dear audience, please share our content as much as possible with your government, with your corporations, and with your academia. And definitely, together we can solve many problems. Thank you. Thank you for joining today's session. Bye-bye and take care.
So
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.